They say a bobcat cannot love its prey. Yet on full moon nights, beneath the old pine tree at the edge of the sanctuary, people still see two tall deer lying by the metal bars, rubbing their heads against them as softly as a touch from memory. Behind those bars, an old bobcat closes her eyes. She doesn't growl, doesn't hiss, doesn't claw. She simply rests her forehead on the very spot where, once, the small feet of two children not of her kind had stood. She's no longer fast, no longer fierce, but she has never stopped being a mother. Someone once asked Elise, the woman who's run this sanctuary for 20 years, why she believed a predator could raise the hunted. Elise only smiled, letting her fingers brush the cold bars. Because some wounds don't kill us, they just open the heart. And because sometimes, in a world torn apart by instinct and logic, the most miraculous things are born from shattered instinct, from things no one ever believed possible, like a bobcat grieving her own cubs, opening her heart, like two orphaned deer finding a mother, and like the way this entire sanctuary, meant to rescue only wild creatures, somehow became a place that heals the souls of humans who have lost faith in tenderness. On windy nights, when the breeze circles through the tin roof of the rehab shed, they say you can hear a lullaby, not quite human, not quite animal, just a rhythm that feels ancient, warm, like a heartbeat left behind in the forest. Whispering Pines Sanctuary isn't marked on most maps. It sits tucked into the northern hills of Arizona, where the snow melts a few weeks late and the sunsets fall a few breaths softer. Hand-painted wooden signs fade into rusted fences and dried grass, leading down a narrow path into the woods, where everything began. Elise Ward walks slowly down the corridor between the enclosures. Every morning she does this before the sun fully climbs above the trees. She carries an old coffee mug, chipped at the rim, cracked along the side like a fracture that never healed, just like her heart. She doesn't repair it, just tape it with a strip of fabric. What's been broken and still endures often lasts longer than what was new. Elise is 50 this year. Her hair is short, peppered with gray. Deep lines frame her eyes, but they still shine. She was once a renowned veterinarian in New York, running a high-end clinic, serving clients who treated pets like ornaments, until a midnight call pulled her from the city, and she never returned. Her son, Ben, was 17 then. He'd volunteered at a rescue center after the storm. A sudden flash flood swept away the car while Ben was trying to carry an injured puppy out of the lowlands. Elise flew out, but all she found was Ben's scarf, tangled in a flooded branch. There was nothing left to save. After that, she sold the clinic, signed the house over to her ex-husband, and moved to Arizona, where there were fewer people, more wind and animals that didn't know how to lie. Whispering Pines was built from her savings and Ben's insurance money. Every brick, every gate, she laid by hand. Elise didn't want a zoo. She called it a place for rebirth, a semi-wild sanctuary where wounded beings could rediscover their instincts, or at least find one reason to keep living. Some said Elise had a cold heart. Maybe. She didn't cry at Ben's funeral, didn't scream, didn't explain. She just sat there, fastening Ben's old bracelet around the neck of a blind stray cat. He would have liked this, she said. Elise's dream wasn't loud. It wasn't revolutionary. She didn't think she was saving the world. She just wanted to create a place, even if only a few square meters, where something abandoned could find shelter, where no one had to beg for the right to live. Gerta, a senior bobcat, lay curled on a wooden plank at the far end of the corridor, her eyes half shut, tail coiled like a half-burnt rope. Elise watched her silently, not to check her vitals, but to remember. Gerta was one of the rare ones, Found after a car accident, leg broken, bleeding from her belly, clear signs she had just given birth. But no cubs were found nearby. Maybe they died. Maybe someone took them. Elise didn't ask. She just laid a thin blanket over Gerta and whispered, "If you still want to be a mother, stay." To this day, Gerta has never left that corner. Not friendly, not aggressive, just still, as if waiting for something that hasn't come. Elise knows that feeling. She has waited too, sometimes for a dream, sometimes for a sound in the night, but mostly just for a nameless emptiness. Anya and Derek, two new interns, walked by with hay and feed bins. Anya greeted Elise with a glance, then looked away. Derek mumbled something about wasting a pen on a solitary bobcat. They love animals, but not long enough to understand. Some creatures don't need care. They just need peace. And sometimes forgiveness. Elise didn't blame them. They were young. They still believed everything could be healed with antibiotics and TikTok videos. But she knew. Some wounds only silence, and time could mend. She rested her hand on Gerta's cage. The metal chilled her fingers, and slowly Elise said, "Not everyone is born a mother. Some only become one when they lose themselves." Then she walked away, leaving behind a shaft of morning light falling through the bars, landing softly on the sleeping bobcat. In that light, Gerta wasn't a wild animal anymore. She was a pause, an unanswered question. The bell at the front gate rang at 6:12 a.m., a sharp, urgent chime, like someone knocking not with hands, but with a breathless heart. Jasper was the one to open it. He rarely rushed, but that morning he ran. The patrol truck stopped crooked at the forest edge, rear tires still spinning dirt. A man stepped out, face pale from the cold. In his hands, a blood-stained wool scarf, heavy with the scent of wild grass. "There were 3, but only 2 made it," he said. Elise appeared minutes later, still holding her untouched coffee. She didn't ask many questions, just motioned toward the medical room. Derek and Anya were already there. Heating blankets are laid out, 4 kits prepared. Red heat lamp glowing. 2 tiny beings were placed on the table. Soaked, cold, unable to lift their heads. One twitched faintly. The other lay still, but breathed, barely. "White-tailed deer," Jasper said, unfolding a paper map and marking the trap site. "Their mother died from blood loss. Whoever set the trap never came back." "Or came back and didn't care," Elise murmured. No one replied. The first few minutes always passed like this, in silence and motion. Anya checked their temperature. 34 degrees Celsius. Derek started the 4th. Elise used a tiny dropper, feeding special milk into the deer's mouth, a pale cream formula she'd perfected over the years. They didn't swallow. No suckling reflex, no sound. "They're not going to make it," Anya whispered, biting her lip to hold back tears. "Their legs aren't firm. Fur still damp." "Any other nursing does?" Derek asked, clinging to hope. Elise shook her head. Every doe on record had either weaned their young or was past breeding. Grafting them to a stranger was nearly impossible. The scent wouldn't match. Instinct would reject them or kill them. No mother, no herd, no hope. But Elise stood there still, hand cradling the fawn's head so it wouldn't tilt back while feeding. Her face gave nothing away, but her fingers trembled. Outside, the sky slowly brightened. Snow clung to the windowsill, the kind that came at winter's end. Not beautiful, just persistent. "What should we call them?" Anya asked, trying to soften the air. Elise said nothing. She didn't name animals that might not survive. Naming was too intimate. And in this world, intimacy was often the most dangerous thing. "We could warm them under the heat lamp," Derek offered. "Set a straw bed, line it with fur scraps, fake a mother's nest." Elise still didn't speak. She was looking toward the hallway corner, where the weak light touched a wooden board listing animal statuses. Under Bobcat, Gerta, it read, "No offspring, no pairing, no contact." No. Derek shook his head, noticing Elise's gaze. "No way. Gerta's a predator." "And deer are prey," Anya added, worried. "What are you thinking?" Elise didn't answer. She simply left the room, walking slowly toward the northern enclosures. Gerta was curled up tight, eyes open, unblinking, ears twitching slightly at the sound of approaching steps, but no other movement. Her pen had always been closed to visitors, not because she was dangerous, but because of grief. She had been found after the accident. Her belly is soft, nipples still full. But no cubs. No one knew what had happened. Elise had once spent a night beside the cage, not to observe, but just to be there. The way Gerta had lain for that month, silent, unfed, unmoving, just waiting, gave Elise a chill of recognition. "Sometimes," Elise whispered as Jasper joined her, "he's sometimes a creature who's lost her young still carries enough instinct to be a mother again." Jasper exhaled. "Sounds nice in theory. But she's a bobcat. She's eaten rabbits, squirrels, weasels, and fawns too if she found them in the wild." "Exactly," Elise replied, eyes still locked on Gerta. "If she accepts the deer, then this is no longer instinct." No one is ever truly prepared for the moment when prey is placed inside a predator's cage. No matter how many theories one holds, how many reasons one clings to, or how small the sliver of hope, your hands still tremble, especially when what's at stake is a life. Elise put on thin gloves, not because of bacteria, but because of the coldness she felt when holding the fawn. A chill that seeped from its skin into her heart. It was smaller than a rag doll. Eyes still shut, legs as thin as crushed scallion stalks, its breath so faint. You'd think it had long stopped unless you pressed your ear close. Anya stood blocking the door. "Please don't. There are other ways. Use the heater, the fur scraps, the fake mother dolls." "Elise," Derek interjected. "Gerta once screamed all night after losing her cubs. That was rage, not nurturing instinct." Elise didn't respond. She turned to Jasper instead. "How's the cage?" Jasper gave a small nod. "I lowered the sliding gate, set up thermal sensors and cameras from all four corners. If there's any sign of aggression, we'll have 2.7 seconds to react." Elise exhaled. Not from relief, but from knowing that no one truly believed in this, not even herself. Gerta had been given a light dose of midazolam, enough to calm but not dull her instincts. Bobcats aren't like cats. They're not like dogs. They don't seek eye contact with humans. They are silent, and they do not forgive. The enclosure had 2 layers. The outer layer was Gerta's regular space. The inner was a mock nest, lined with fresh straw, enclosed in mesh with an exit point for the fawns if needed. Elise placed the 2 tiny lives inside. No cries. Just a faint sound, like a sigh swallowed by dry grass. The gate closed. Jasper switched the camera feed to the main monitor in the observation room. Anya crossed her arms tightly, standing behind. Derek whispered, "This is madness." Gerta lay still in the corner, eyes open, motionless, like a statue. Elise knew that stillness was readiness, It wasn't surrender. Minute 3. No change. Minute 10. One fawn stirred slightly. A leg twitched. The air remained dead quiet. Minute 17. Gerta turned her head, just slightly, a few degrees, but enough to show she had heard. Elise held her breath. Minute 24. The bobcat stood. No sound in her movement. Soft as wind. Gerta stepped slowly, paws touching the ground just enough to balance. Her body taut, muscles light, like a bowstring just drawn. Derek placed his hand on the emergency release. Anya wept in silence. Gerta approached the straw nest, stopped, sniffed. The fawn shivered. One nudged forward, its head brushing the fur beneath the bobcat's belly. Unconscious, instinctive. Gerta didn't growl, didn't hiss. She only lowered her head and began to lick. One long, slow stroke from neck to shoulder. Anya dropped her hands from her mouth. Derek froze. Jasper stopped taking notes. Elise sat down, not because she was tired, but because her knees had buckled under the weight of what she had just seen. Gerta curled beside the nest. The two fawns nestled into her belly, pressing against the old scar where milk had once flowed. Gerta exhaled gently, resting her head on the straw. No logic could explain that moment. Only silence and tears. That night, Elise didn't go home. She stayed in the monitoring room, her hand resting on the screen. On it, Gerta lay sleeping, one leg stretched protectively across a fawn's tiny body. Anya sat beside her, voice barely audible. "I thought you were using them as live bait." Elise didn't turn. She only replied softly, "I once thought." Gerta didn't want to be a mother anymore. But maybe I was wrong. There are moments in life when time doesn't move forward, nor does it rewind. It simply pauses, as if the entire universe holds its breath to see if a heart is still beating. Inside the straw nest, the two fawns curled tightly together, bodies soft as worn pillows. Each breath was a tiny jerk of the chest, so weak it seemed almost see-through. Gerta lay in the corner, eyes open, watching, not like a predator sizing up prey, but like someone listening for a call deep inside that even she couldn't understand. Time passed like water trapped between rocks, slow, still. No one knew if it had been an hour or only a few minutes. But everyone in the observation room had stopped speaking. Elise didn't take her eyes off the screen. Her hand rested on the desk, thumb tapping gently, a habit from the old days of waiting for surgeries to end. Then, a sound broke through. Faint. So faint. But enough to stir the room frozen in silence. The smaller fawn shifted. One leg stretched out. Then its entire body leaned toward the soft fur patch of the nest. A quiet meh escaped, like a sigh choked by fear. Gerta lifted her head. Not abruptly, no noise, just like a branch shaking off dew, software full of instinct. Elise leaned closer to the monitor. Anya, without thinking, took half a step toward the pen door. "Wait," Elise said, not loudly, but firmly enough to stop her in place. Gerta moved forward, eyes open, ears slightly folded back. Derek murmured, "If she growls, if she turns." But Gerta didn't turn, didn't growl. She lowered her head, a single lick, very slow. From the fawn's head, down its cheek, then around the neck, carefully, gently. as if she were remembering how to do it after a 2-month sleep. Then another lick, this time to the other fawn. It trembled, but didn't pull away. It leaned closer. On the screen, a bobcat was grooming prey. Number not prey anymore, a child. Anya covered her mouth with both hands. She sobbed quietly. Derek backed toward the chair. He didn't sit, just leaned on the table, as if afraid his legs couldn't carry the weight of the moment. Elise didn't cry, but her fingers brushed the screen, and for the first time in many months, she smiled. Software, faint, like the mist of early winter, fleeting but unforgettable to those who saw it. In the hours that followed, Gerta never left the nest. She didn't lie on the fawns. She curled around them, forming a soft arc of fur, warm enough to heat, gentle enough not to smother, alive enough to offer presence, but never suffocation. Elise ordered the room temperature to drop from 30 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius, to ensure Gerta's body was the only heat source. She wanted to know, was affection born from touching warmth, or born from the cold being touched? Jasper added an infrared camera to the pen's corner. On the night feed, every breath was visible. Gerta breathed slowly, rhythmically. Eyes opened and closed, but her ears, always alert. That evening, the impossible happened. The smaller fawn, the weakest, began to search for a nipple. Though Gerta had no milk, she didn't push it away. She let it suckle, as if that act alone could preserve a memory of what once was hers. Elise called for more formula. They fed it through a thin tube, placed close to Gerta's belly, so the fawn could suckle while smelling what it believed to be its mother. Anya stayed the whole night. Didn't do anything, just watched. Near dawn, she whispered, "I used to hate bobcats. They were wild, aggressive, unpredictable." Elise looked at the young woman. In her eyes, something was both ancient and being born anew. "And now?" Elise asked. Anya didn't answer right away. She only said, "I think, maybe, they're not aggressive. Maybe they just never had someone to be gentle with. There are things far too tender to be written into reports. They have no metrics, no terminology, only witness and a feeling in the heart, like someone just lit a candle in a room that has been dark for a very long time." Gerta began waking up earlier. She no longer stayed curled up all day. She rose when the fawns stirred. Not because their movements woke her, but as if she could sense the soft vibrations in the straw. She licked their faces, their necks, even their backs, meticulously, like someone searching for memories through every small patch of fur. The fawns opened their eyes on the 8th day, not at the same time. The smaller one opened first, dark brown eyes, slightly cloudy, blinking as if unsure about the light. The other followed a day later, but when it opened, its gaze went straight to Gerta. Elise watched from the monitor. No one spoke. But in that moment, the entire room seemed to be witnessing something beyond the rules of biology, something rooted in the nature of trust itself. They began to walk after nearly 2 weeks, wobbly, trembling, toppling over, but always rising again. What was strange was, they never cried when they fell. They just turned to find the quiet silhouette behind them, and Gerta was always there. Not lifting them, not carrying them, but standing, close enough to feel safe, far enough to learn how to stand alone. Anya was the first to notice. She placed her hand on the monitor's frame, eyes fixed ahead. "I didn't think a bobcat could teach a deer to walk," she whispered. Elise smiled. Many mothers don't think they can either. But then, they do. Derek became quieter by the third week. He spent hours behind the thermal cam, meticulously logging behaviors, how many licks, how many cries, how many times Gerta shifted position. Not because of protocol, but because, in each repetition, he found something soothing. One night, when Elise returned to the monitoring room, she found Derek slumped over the desk, notebook open, pen dropped. He wasn't asleep, just closed-eyed, lips moving faintly. Elise started to turn away, but then she caught it. "I've never seen anything this gentle." That sentence, meant for no one, asking nothing in return, simply lingered in the room, like a confession, light as air. The story began to spread from a short blog post Anya had written, part of a personal animal photo journal she started back in college. Bobcat raises fawns. Not a fairy tale. It's happening where I work. The post had 78 shares on its first day, then 1,200, then 10,000, then uncountable. A local news station came to film. Elise declined interviews. They shot from a distance through frosted glass, just enough to see a creature curled around two smaller ones. The headline made the front page the following week. "A miracle in Whispering Pines, the Bobcat and her children not of her kind." Then came a wildlife documentary team from Vancouver. They emailed, attaching a CGI test clip simulating Gerta licking the fawns in the snow. Elise closed the video after 18 seconds. "We don't need a film," she told Jasper. "We need quiet." But quiet didn't last long. One morning, a helicopter hovered overhead. Not for Gerta, but for the sanctuary, which had been nominated as a research site for a federal program. They'd heard about her. Elise walked straight to the gate, expression unchanged. "There's nothing here to study," she said, "only something to listen to." People thought she would invite them in, but she didn't. She turned her back and shut the gate. It wasn't opened again until sundown. After the sun had dipped behind the ridge and Gerta was already asleep. That night, Anya didn't go home. She asked to stay in the monitoring hut. Elise agreed. Before leaving, she saw Anya sitting on a small wooden chair, wrapped in a blanket, holding a sketchbook. A sketchbook. The first page, Gerta. The next, the fawns. The final page. All three curled together like a giant question mark, set against the world's heart. Some farewells need no tears, because when love runs deep enough, you understand. Holding on is not the same as keeping, and leaving doesn't mean disappearing. It just means beginning again somewhere else, in a different form. The morning of the relocation came earlier than planned. The fawns had grown tall, legs long, bellies full of milk, ears perked like new leaves listening to wind for the first time. They had begun to leap around the pen, rubbing budding antlers on logs, occasionally sniffing the sky through the bars. Jasper was the first to speak. "It's time." Elise didn't reply. She already knew, but knowing isn't the same as being ready. Gerta made no reaction when the cage door opened. She stood, retreated to the corner, and curled up. She didn't make eye contact, but her ears moved, listening in that quiet, primal way wild things do. Anya clutched a fleece blanket, the one the fawns had slept on when they were tiny. Now it only held a faded scent, and a few stray white hairs. She didn't offer it to anyone, just held it. When Elise stepped into the pen, her hands trembled. She had moved hundreds of animals before, but this was different. This time it wasn't because they were healed, it was because they had been loved. Gerta didn't growl, didn't hiss. When Elise lifted the fawns from the nest, she simply rose, slowly, and followed. No clawing, no resistance, just 4 steps behind Elise. Then she stopped. The fawns were moved to the semi-wild zone in the south, a place with soft grass, light shade, and a small stream. No metal fence, just natural borders drawn by the scent of soil and the openness of sky. Elise turned back. Gerta stood 3 paces from the fence. She didn't cry, didn't wail. She simply watched. "Do you think she understands?" Anya asked, still staring. Elise didn't answer immediately. She looked into Gerta's eyes. Eyes that didn't demand, didn't resent, only went deep, like a dried-up lake bed touching stone. "Yes," she whispered. A mother doesn't hold her children with chains. She holds them with enough memory that they won't fear the world. In the days that followed, Gerta returned to the fence every morning. She didn't call, she didn't search. She just stood there, sniffing the wind, listening to brittle twigs and sometimes blinking, very slowly. Anya asked, "Do you think she's sad?" Elise replied, "I think she remembers." A week later, Jasper brought back a young owl with a broken wing, found near the gas station at the forest's edge. No one knew where it came from. It just lay in a cardboard box, silent, motionless. Feathers, soft as old silk. Elise placed it in the medical room by the window. That same evening, Gerta appeared. No one knew how. Maybe she smelled it. Maybe she just sensed. She stood outside the glass. Didn't move, didn't tap, didn't claw. Just watched. The next day, the same. And the next. Every time Elise entered the room, Gerta was there, like a living statue. Golden amber eyes gazing through the window, piercing into the silence of a creature in pain. No one taught her to do that. No treats, no commands. Just the stillness of someone who had known loss, standing beside someone learning to endure it. One late afternoon, rain fell lightly. Gerta didn't come. Elise passed by her pen and found her lying still in the old nest, the one where the fawns had once lain. Her paws tucked in, tail wrapped around her nose, eyes closed. Elise didn't call her. She just stood there, and in that moment, she understood. Some wounds don't kill you. They simply open the heart. That evening, as the young staff gathered for dinner in the main kitchen, Anya whispered, "I think Gerta is teaching us something." Derek nodded. That we don't need to share a species, a language, or instincts to know how to care for one another. Jasper said nothing. He simply slid a newly printed photo across the table. Gerta was standing by the fence, and in the background, 2 fawns curled together, sleeping beneath the evening light. No one laughed, and no one needed to. It was just something in their chests slowed down, then settled. There are beings who don't leave behind roars or claw marks. They leave behind silence, deep enough for others to look into and be changed. Willow and Fern now stood as tall as an adult's shoulder. Their coats glistened in soft brown, streaked with touches of gray, like lingering snowfall. Their budding antlers had begun to form, thin and symmetrical like the rhythm of a forest's breath. They no longer curled in nests, no longer nestled into anyone's chest, but sometimes, on breezy afternoons, they would quietly return to the northern fence, where a small figure lay sunbathing on a warm stone slab. Gerta didn't run to greet them. She didn't turn away either. She simply sat there, occasionally nudging her head against the bars. The very spot where 2 damp noses once pressed. No sound, no drama. Just a simple reunion. Between hearts that had once borrowed from each other to grow. The retirement habitat was completed just as autumn arrived. Elise chose a spot with a gentle slope. Sunlight in the mornings, shade in the afternoons. A tall tree for Gerta to climb, a warm rock to lie on, a little stream murmuring nearby like the earth whispering old stories. No one called it a cage. They called it Gerta's home. Jasper planted a small wooden sign at the gate. Gerta, Bobcat, Mother. No birth year, no tracking code. Just that. The documentary premiere took place at a small theater in Flagstaff. Elise hadn't planned to attend. She feared the lights, feared the questions, feared applause for something that wasn't hers. But she came anyway, because Anya had saved seats for the whole team. Last 3 rows, all together. Popcorn is shared equally. Everyone wore old coats and hooded sweaters, like kids sneaking into a movie. The film had no narration, only images, the sound of the forest, deer calls, and soft breathing in the night. The title appeared at the very end. The Bobcat Who Loved Prey, a lullaby in the thinning woods. Elise sat still throughout the screening. When the screen faded to black, people stood. She stayed seated, not out of emotion, but because she knew a part of her now lived inside those frames. Not the lead role, but the backdrop. The quiet stage that allowed the miracle to bloom. The following week, the financial report showed donations had nearly doubled. Some of it was used to purchase new thermal monitors. Most, Elise set aside to establish a new fund, the Other Mothers Fund, supporting interspecies rescue programs and research on empathy in wild animals. The name was Derek's idea. When asked why, he simply shrugged, because not everyone is a birth mother, but anyone can be gentle. One afternoon, the sky turned the color of ripe apricots. Elise sat by the retirement fence, back resting against a pine tree, holding a mug of hot tea. She didn't come as a doctor or a founder, just as someone who had once lost and had once witnessed the unbelievable. Gerta stepped out from beneath the tree's shade, unhurried. She walked up to the bars, then sat just one arm's length away from Elise. No call, no pleading gaze. Elise lowered her head, pressed her hand to the bars. Gerta pressed her forehead to the same spot. Elise whispered, "You didn't just save 2 creatures. You saved us from a faith that had run dry." Gerta didn't move. She just closed her eyes. That night, Fern and Willow lay beneath the tree near the stream. The moon rose, cold but bright. A small owl flew overhead, circled once, then perched nearby, its wings unfurled like memory. No one spoke, but somehow, all 3 seemed to remember a pair of arms that had once been warm enough for them all. And there, in the forest stillness, beneath an unspoken sky, the story of a bobcat and her 2 unlikely fawns didn't end. It simply continued. In every step that no longer feared, in every gaze that no longer flinched, and in every quiet moment the world, so often cruel, still quietly leaves behind.